Yeah, yeah. All right, we're back. Yeah, so it seems like the sound was a little bit low. I think now it should be a little bit better. Let's hope it's not maxed out the whole time. All right. Fix my headphones. Hold on. Yep. All right. Oh shit. You don't really want to have that up there. Do it like this. We just close that down. Leave page. All right. Skip that there. All right. So we just joined this or rejoined this debate. One politician versus 25 voters or undecided voters. Pete Buttigieg on Surrounded from the Jubilee channel. Let's see what these people got to say. I think the issue is President Trump is only running for president for himself. Kamala Harris is running to make life better, make your life better. All right, that was the original statement. If y'all want to see what was happening before, there's a video before this that's also from the end. It explains the whole story, a little bit about the channel too. This is your first time watching, feel free to like and subscribe. Like I said, this is the beginning. We build into something hopefully fantastic. So you can be, how do you say? You can be proud to say that you were the first one. You were subscriber numero uno. Wouldn't that be cool? If I end up being like some super duper YouTuber, super duper YouTuber, you could say you were numero uno. All right. So like it already, even though you know what I'm about. All right. We drop into this surrounded with Pete Buttigieg.
Sorry. Hi. How you doing? Same here.
So I want to play devil's advocate a little bit, just
All right.
poke or chicken tag your brain a little bit. When you are looking at things such as, I believe, multiple assassination attempts on Donald Trump, looking at things where he's walked into a position where he has experienced really awful media conversation about him, putting him in a horrible light.
Well, it's not people putting him in a horrible light. It's his behavior that's being reported on, reported upon or on. Because no one's making lies. No one's making AI stories or AI clips of him. This is his behavior, his actions. So you can't say they're putting him in a bad light. They're just reporting on his activity.
It's comparing him to Hitler, et cetera, et cetera, you know?
His vice presidential candidate compared him to Hitler. His ideology is what makes people compare him to Hitler. It's the reason to feel sorry for him because of that.
Justified or not, either way it's happening. And I would say things
Well, it's kind of important if it's justified or not. If it's not justified, then you have a point to be having a discussion about. If it's justified, then don't you think it'd be appropriate for news organizations and people in general to be talking about the fact that this person is acting like a fascist?
more on that line when I would say he's made his life harder by running not only once but losing and then running again. He's been in politics for multiple years now. How
This is such a talking point. This man is a egomaniac. How much of an ego boost is it then to be president of arguably the most powerful country in all of history? You know what I'm saying? How much of an ego kick, how much of a boost would that be for his brand for him to say that he did that?
How do you look at that and the determination he's in it for himself when I would say he's made his life a lot more difficult? I mean, he's a billionaire. He could be sitting up playing golf.
Yeah, no, look, I've heard this argument. Here's what I'd say. First of all, he's made a lot of money off of the presidential campaign. He hasn't just made money by being in business. Matter of fact, if you took the money he inherited and just put it in the stock market, it would be about.
According to Forbes, up until 2018, Trump had outperformed the stock market. Wait, uh, it's hard to see this. I need my glasses. Okay, according to Forbes, up till 2018, Trump had outperformed the stock market by about $1 billion. After COVID, the stock market shot up and his assets fell, making him worth less than he'd have than making him worth less than what he'd have if he put his inheritance into the S&P 500. Ooh, that was hard worded. Making him worth less than what he'd have if he put his inheritance in the S&P 500, meaning he mismanaged his money since 2018.
Same. So most of what he's done in his business career has been destroying shareholder value. But leaving that aside, once he became president, there was a ton of self-dealing going on, right? Folks staying at his hotels who might have had interests before the government that he was.
Both foreign and domestic officials stayed at Trump's DC's hotel during his presidency when conducting official business with him. It's a little bit of money.
Running, members of his family cutting deals.
Democrats alleged that this violated the Constitution's emoluments clause, which prohibits elected leaders from receiving gifts or payments from foreign leaders. The Supreme Court instructed lower courts to dismiss lawsuits on the matter as moot after Trump left office. The Supreme Court instructed lower courts to dismiss lawsuits on the matter as moot after Trump left office. So basically, they never went to trial. The Supreme Court just said, hey, drop it. I wonder why that is. Because it's a right-wing Supreme Court with, what is it, 3 justices that Trump handpicked himself?
Deals, including overseas, that they probably wouldn't have been able to cut if they weren't related to the president's campaign. He hasn't just made money by being in business. Matter of fact, if you took the money he inherited and just put it in the stock market, it would be about the same. So most of what he's done in his business career has been destroying shareholder value. But leaving that aside, once he became president, there was a ton of self-dealing going on, right? Folks staying at his hotels who might have had interests before the government that he was running, members of his family cutting deals, including overseas, that they probably wouldn't have been able to cut if they weren't related to the president of the United States. Now, I get what you're saying, that anybody who gets into public service, anybody who puts their name on the line, anybody who runs for president, takes on a lot of negativity that comes with that. At a different level, I've experienced the negativity of being in public service. My husband and I worry sometimes about our family just because we're out there, and nobody should have to experience that. And one thing we should be able unequivocally to agree on is that nobody should ever accept political violence, no matter who it's directed at, and no matter.
I mean, if political violence was a normal way in any country, then what you would get is people being afraid to run for office. The best and the brightest people would stay away from that because they don't want to risk their lives and they don't want to risk their families. So no, political violence should never be a part of any political system because it makes the system dysfunctional.
Takes on a lot of negativity that comes with that. At a different level, I've experienced the negativity of being in public service. My husband and I worry sometimes about our family just because we're out there, and nobody should have to experience that. And one thing we should be able unequivocally to agree on is that nobody should ever accept political violence, no matter who it's directed at and no matter why, right? It is categorically unacceptable, wrong, and disgusting for there to have been an attempt on the life of any political candidate, including him, right? I still think, though, that he didn't do this because he woke up and thought, I'm going to make some sacrifices to help other people, and that's why I'm going to run for president. I just don't believe that. But either way,
Can
what
I
I
ask
do
why I
know,
don't believe that?
what's that?
His actions.
Can I ask why I don't believe that?
Because I've never seen him express much interest or concern for others. Like recently, he got a question about childcare. He went on this like 2 or 3 minute rant, and the one thing he didn't mention was childcare. Because I don't think he thinks about it that much. It's other people's problems, right? He's interested in his own, mostly his own past. This whole thing about like retribution and revenge.
If you're ignoring AI, you could be making a grave mistake that will haunt you for the rest of your life.
I would have to say AI is important, and we should all know something about it. Pay attention. It's going to be making a huge impact on all our lives. So
It's like 2 or 3 minute rant, and the one thing he didn't mention was childcare. Because I don't think he thinks about it that much. It's other people's problems, right? He's interested in his own, mostly his own past. This whole thing about like retribution and revenge. I don't know him. I've never been in a room with him. And I've at least met most prominent Republicans in the Senate because of my job. I will admit that I don't know him personally. But a lot of people I do who do know him say that he's in it for himself, including his own chief of staff. It's not like some intern, right? His own chief of staff has some of the most blistering and disturbing things to say about him. But also, I don't know him. I do know her.
if you want to know somebody, you should listen to people that's closest to him, his family, people that worked with him. Even his family doesn't have good things to say about him. You know, where's Ivanka at? Why is she not being a part of this campaign even? How many times she's been on campaign with him? 2, 3 times from what I remember. What about Melania? Where's she at? She popped up with him. It was time to sell her book. But where she's at? Look at the people around him. They don't trust him. They don't want to be. They don't like him. Would you like somebody that made a fool of you in public? That the whole world knows cheated on you while you was nursing their child. Cheated on you with a porn star. Not to say anything wrong with being a porn star, but in the law and order, evangelical world. That makes sense? He's the godly candidate.
The one thing he didn't mention was childcare, because I don't think he thinks about it that much. It's other people's problems, right? He's interested in his own, mostly his own past. This whole thing about like retribution and revenge. I don't know him. I've never been in a room with him. And I've at least met most prominent Republicans in the Senate because of my job. I will admit that I don't know him personally. But a lot of people I do who do know him say that he's in it for himself, including his own chief of staff. It's not like some intern, right? His own chief of staff has some of the most blistering and disturbing things to say about him. But also, I don't know him. I do know her. Okay. And it says a lot, I think, about somebody if you come to respect and admire somebody while you're competing against each other. Like, I got to know her when like 20 of us were running for president. We were all campaigning, jostling, each of us trying to get the edge. And
if I have one contention with what you're saying, that sparks a thought in me is, do you think you have a little bit of an innate bias because you know her well, or somewhat well?
Well, I'm definitely on her side, like, obviously, right? That's why I'm here. Yeah. But there are people in my party who I don't think of as kind of the ideal public servant, right?
I mean, and this is something too. I mean, there's very few Republicans that would, admit to flaw in their party. Admit that some of the people that they have on their side just don't have the country's best interests at heart. That they're self-motivated, that they're looking for whether it be power or status or whatever it may be. I think a lot of that, you would never see that on the Republican side.
Just because we're in the same, don't get me in trouble.
I'm kidding.
Well, I say just because you're a Democrat, that doesn't mean I'm.
Oh, did you say like who?
That's why I'm here. But there are people in my party who I don't think of as kind of the ideal public servant, right? Just because we're in the same, don't get me in trouble.
I'm kidding.
Well, I say just because you're a Democrat, that doesn't mean I'm giving everybody the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
But she's somebody who, when I see her, when I've been in meetings with her, the questions she's usually asking are, "What's this going to mean to people?" For example, she's the kind of person who would say, "Here's what I'm leaning toward doing. Tell me the best argument against doing that."
Discussion, understanding that you could be wrong. You know what I'm saying? Not having hubris, being humble,
And
not necessarily saying you're the best at everything. I know the most of everything.
I just can't picture him ever doing that. And that's what I want, especially with some of these fierce, wicked challenges coming our way as a country. Her mentality is what I would want to see in the Situation Room, in the
That's what we should all want to see.
Oval Office, in just behind the mic talking to the American people about what to do next.
I think as an average American voter, I personally have a lot of issue seeing those things that you are seeing as someone who maybe knows her better than, of course.
Because you're not paying attention, my man. Every time she's on stage, she basically repeats the same thing over and over again. Her plan for housing, her plan for tax cuts or tax credits. It's the Kamala Harris speech. It's the thing. Coming from a middle class background, working her way up through life, proving her way through as a strong woman. You're not paying attention.
The average American, because I see interviews or different questions that she has, and I feel like I've seen it called word salad a little bit. I don't feel like
You're
I
not
can
paying
get
attention.
an impression of what she really is believing, and that makes it really difficult for me to view her beliefs and what she would enact as her policies and be like, yeah, I back that, because I honest to God, don't know what they are.
Well, let me help with that. All right. So
Thank you,
a
Mary
big
Pete.
part of her focus is making sure that life in America is more affordable. That's why she's pushing for a child tax credit. It's why she wants the tax code to be fair versus his tax cuts for the rich plan. He did it before, so pretty confident he's going to do it again. On issues like climate, which we've already talked about a little bit this morning, she's somebody who wants to make sure that we expand the work we've done to deal with carbon pollution. On access to abortion, she wants to make sure that women have that right restored, right? He took it away. She wants to bring it back through legislation.
I think
Nice talking to you.
Oh, that was that. Let's give it a pause for a second. I think if you're really paying attention, it's easy to see which candidate has a clear platform, what they stand for, and what they're about. People try to turn around and say, "Oh well, the Kamala Harris supporters feel more like they're how you say it, like they're more against Trump. They're how to say it, galvanizing around their hate for him rather than their love for her ideas. And I think if you talk about ideas, she's the only one with ideas. Tariffs are not going to fix everything. It's going to take a process.
Nice to meet you, I'm John. So, as someone who says they know Kamala's
What up,
character
John?
probably more than any of us here, my sort of criticism of the campaign thus far, and it's kind of due to the circumstance of Biden dropping out so soon next to the race. I don't think I've been convinced enough by the campaign. I don't think I've had, like they've said, word salad, stuff like that. In terms of policy, I'm not really too sure, and I can say this is not just me because the polling numbers didn't really change after the debate. I don't think either candidate did a good job at the debate. I think it was one of the
Did you watch the whole debate? Or did you watch the clips from the debate? Because if you watched the whole debate, you would understand. Just about anybody watching would say that she trashed him. It was a killing. If she's the DA, she should charge herself. You know what I'm saying? That was a murder. Yeah, she was a little bit nervous in the beginning. She had some trouble explaining her ideas. It was her first debate as president or a presidential candidate of the United States. Of course, she's gonna be a little bit nervous. But to say that neither candidate expressed themselves, I mean, all we remember is the eating cats and eating dogs from Trump's debate. And on top of that, if he won, why wouldn't he do it again? take her on again. You know what I'm saying? Debate number 2. What happened to that? Why you scared? Run it.
Worst debates we've ever watched. It was ugly. So just in your eyes, what?
So I feel differently. Maybe that's to be expected. I felt like she won the debate for this reason. I felt he was mostly talking about himself or people he wanted to demonize, right? The whole thing like they're eating cats or whatever, right? I mean, that was his big thing. And she was talking about what she would do to solve problems. Now, look, with all of the glare of a presidential campaign, it is hard for somebody's like full character to come through.
Exactly.
And it's hard to get that out in some of these formats. But I actually thought the debate, obviously, it hit you a little differently. But I thought the debate, you could really tell the difference between what he cares about, mainly him, and what she cares about, which is the stuff she wants to do. Her whole point about how he's going to come in with an enemies list, she's going to come in with a to-do list, right?
Yeah,
Is that like somewhat convincing to you?
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not. I would probably never vote for Trump. It would be more like she said between Kamala and a
Okay,
third
then
party,
please, because a big part of what we're trying to do is reach out to folks who aren't going to vote for him, but they're deciding whether or not to vote. And what I want voters like you to hear is anything but a vote for her works out to being a vote for him right now.
Yeah, his supporters don't care. He's going to have his backers. They're not convincible. They're not trying to listen to facts. They don't care about the issues. It's like they're in a cult. They simply want to support this man. They'll let him do whatever failures, they're going down with the ship.
Because this is a swing state. You live in Michigan, right?
Yep.
In a few days, either it's going to be him or it's going to be her. And it could come down to like a couple votes per precinct, and one of those might be you.
It could be. I just, as a principal rule, don't really agree with the two-party system, and I would do anything to.
But this is what we have right now. And if you're going to change it outside of an election. Now we're inside the election cycle. There's, let's say, 3 other years of the year. 3 out of the 4 years, work on it in 3 years. This is not the time. This is time to vote.
Completely demolish it. I think if the founding fathers saw what we had today, they would riot with their muskets out of the grave.
I mean, they didn't want parties. It's true, right? Like you read a lot of the early statements of the founders. They were like, "Watch out for this," of course. And here we are.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, good talking to you.
All right, that was the first issue. What do we have? 2 or 3 different people who came up and spoke. Yeah, we had, I don't remember her name, lady that was concerned about spending elsewhere when Americans are suffering. Why send money to other countries? Then we had Miss Saylor, the environmentalist, who has some good points. But at the same time, if you're about the environment, you have to choose the candidate who's going to be as close to what you believe, who has a chance of winning. Because if you don't, the other person will win that has no similarity to yours. Then we had Tall Man here, was talking about, well, he did say he was being devil's advocate, asking why would Trump go through all this trouble to run for president. His life would be better off if he wasn't, but it's not true. First of all, a lot of those riches that people thought he had, he didn't really have. Check out the interview with the producers from The Apprentice. They'll actually tell you, they actually said straight up that they helped to create that image of him as a successful businessman. Half of it is smoke and mirrors. Trump's a clown.
Jubilee's mission is to be a home for empathy and human connection. As such, we've been in touch with members from both political parties and have standing invitations to Vice President Harris, President Trump, and other political representatives. If you're a notable figure and would like to participate in Surrounded, please contact us using the form below.
Maybe one day I'll be notable enough to be on Jubilee.
Here we are.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, good talking to you.
Jubilee's mission is to be a home for empathy and human connection. As such, we've been in touch with members from both political parties and have standing invitations to Vice President Harris, President Trump, and other political representatives. If you're a notable figure and would like to participate in Surrounded, please contact us using the form below.
Not yet, but I'm coming.
My next claim is the economy, especially here in the industrial Midwest, will be better off under Kamala Harris.
Trickle down economics doesn't work. It's the simplest way I can put it. Cutting taxes for the people on top and then saying that they'll create opportunities for the people below them has never worked. There's no studies that shows that it works. What usually happens is the people on the top, they make themselves more secure, whether it's building a bigger house, saving more for their family, investing more for themselves, taking a bigger bonus, whatever it is, it tends to be that they keep more of that money for themselves. Some does trickle down to the how do you say, the average citizen, but it's not enough for it to be a economic policy of a party or strategy to try to fix the situation that's happening in America. So no, the economy will not be better under Donald Trump as opposed to Kamala Harris.
We hear a lot about Vice President Harris's plan for her economy, and it has to do with housing, and it has to do with tax credits, but we don't hear about what it has to do with manufacturing. Whereas when we hear President Trump's talk, even though I don't necessarily agree with tariffs and things along those lines, he does talk about manufacturing.
Who would agree with tariffs? I think most people don't really understand how tariffs work. If you put a tariff on imports from a particular country or a particular company, that that company just passes down the expenses to the customers. If you put a 20% tariff, they'll charge the customer 20% more, so that their bottom line stays the same, and that tariff is paid to the government. But it just comes out of the customer's pocket in one form or another. Tariffs are nonsense.
And in
At least, maybe not nonsense, but nonsense to solve the economic woes of America. You can't get rid of taxes and replace them with tariffs. No economist would agree with that.
hear a lot about Vice President Harris's plan for her economy, and it has to do with housing, and it has to do with tax credits, but we don't hear about what it has to do with manufacturing. Whereas when we hear President Trump's talk, even though I don't necessarily
I mean, I really have to say, America's not in the manufacturing economy anymore. You had the agricultural revolution. People started having farms. So instead of everybody in hunter gatherers, everybody having to get food for themselves, you have people that were going out doing that. So less and less people was working in the fields. But you start creating new ideas, you move us to the industrial revolution, where people is actually manufacturing things, cars and trains and trucks and tanks or whatever. But then after a while, those people want a higher standard of life. So they want to be working, let's say, for example, blue collar jobs instead of white collar jobs. Sorry, white collar jobs instead of blue collar jobs. You know what I'm saying? They want to be more relaxed. So they move into the administrative part. They become managers. They become supervisors. They're not the ones on the actual ground doing the work. And that's where America is now. America is like the manager, the supervisor, the administrator of the world. Most of the American income comes from administrative jobs, or worst case scenario, stocks, venture capitalists, hedge fund managers, people like that. The time for a manufacturing job has passed because what it costs to manufacture things is not the wages that people want to get paid. The average American car builder doesn't want to accept the same amount of money as the average car builder in India, for example, or in China. So you have cheaper labor. Labor makes things. Is part of manufacturing. So wherever the cheap labor is, that's where the manufacturer is going to go. It's time to evolve the economy.
Necessarily agree with tariffs and things along those lines. He does talk about manufacturing, and in a state such as ours that relies heavily on that, and as you alluded to earlier with EV credits or EV, battery manufacturing, things like that.
Yeah.
How do we see an increase in that manufacturing in our state? We haven't heard anything about that.
So I'll grant you that he talks a good game about manufacturing. He brings it up everywhere he goes. I'd like for us to do even more of that on our side. But I would start by saying results, right? So people sometimes are asked to forget about this, but there was a manufacturing recession under Trump, even before COVID. And obviously we all know what happened with COVID. Right now,
Let's go back to that. Manufacturing recession, he says. What's the fact check? The economy added 462,000 manufacturing jobs during Trump's first 2 years in office, but lost 43,000 in 2019. That is before the pandemic. So, net gain is about 419,000 jobs in 2 years.
there's more investment in putting up factories in the United States than any time in the last 50 years. Like, there's never been a time. Hopefully, you've seen it. Where do you live in the state?
Just north of here.
Okay, so definitely in the middle part of the state. Some of it's around EVs, some of it's more traditional manufacturing, some of it's like clean tech, some of it's stuff like data centers. But I've never seen a moment when you had this many. First of all, just people in the building trades building the factories, and then people starting to get jobs in the factories. I grew up in a city that was the hometown for Studebaker, and Studebaker died in 1963. And even though that was before I was born, you could feel it the whole time I was growing up. And when I became mayor there in 2012, it was 50 years later, and we were still kind of licking our wounds from that. And
Yeah, these things take time. The economy changes. Horse and carriages move on to cars, but it takes a while for the workforce to catch up. It's gonna be a minute. People are gonna be jobless. That's why you need a candidate that has a good, for lack of a way of putting it, a good welfare system, a good system to take care of those that don't have. All right, let's keep it rolling.
now there's investments going on in that county creating manufacturing jobs like we haven't seen, again, like since the Kennedy years. I also think it's really important to look at kind of who's credible on this, right? So I really trust the United Auto Workers, especially because they did not always give Democrats the easiest time. Remember how like they really made first Joe Biden and then Kamala Harris like work for that endorsement, and they're saying, yeah, vote for her, not for him, right?
And
To
I get
me,
the endorsement. I mean,
Yeah.
not to interrupt. I get
Yeah.
the endorsement, but where is that manufacturing plan coming from? I mean, we haven't heard anything about, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to invest in X to make the United States be the pillar of this, or I want to invest in Michigan so that they can do Y. We haven't heard any specifics. And granted, she's 100 and some days into a campaign that I feel like she was drafted into versus wanted to be into, but specifics.
And I would argue it's a little harder for some of her manufacturing vision to get across because every day we're arguing about like McDonald's or Taylor Swift or like whatever he's decided to change the subject to, right? So
Exactly. It's a lot of distractions because they don't have no plan. It's just talking about nothing. That's why there was no second debate.
phenomenon you're describing is probably not, it's not us not wanting to get a manufacturing message out. It's a lot of noise that we're up against. But part of how it works is a tax structure that encourages investment. It's making sure that we do double down on having stuff like EVs made in places like Michigan, not in places like China, right? So whether you choose to buy one or not, and that's your choice. I hope you buy one that's that's made by American auto workers and not one made overseas. And that could totally depend on whether the policies that were in the Inflation Reduction Act get destroyed or not. Right? There's a lot of things in there like the tax credits that bring the manufacturing back onto American soil. That's part of why the manufacturing is happening right now.
Thank you very much.
All right. Looks like they wanted to switch out people. Maybe people weren't so interested in manufacturing. But when it comes to manufacturing, unions, anything like that, I mean, Kamala Harris has showed that she's the better candidate. I mean, Trump wants to, how do you say? He wants to make Elon Musk in charge of government efficiency. What do you think that's going to do? It's going to take away all the agencies that maintain all these rules and regulations. OSHA, for example. What do you think is going to happen with OSHA? Who's going to go and check all the safety levels at different jobs, mines, and factories and such? Right. Yeah. But you know what? I need to take another break. So if there's anybody around, I'm gonna hook up some things, make the channel more ready, and also make sure I'm not making no mistakes. Stay tuned for a little bit more in a second.